Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for making the effort this evening, and hopefully it's going to be worth your while. As Malcolm just said, I'm Vassilios Carellas, CEO of Ortac Resources. Ortac is we're a name-listed company with our flagship project in Slovakia, and then with a number of other investments in Africa. Our flagship project in Slovakia is 1.3 million ounces. It's gone through the pre-fee stage, and now we're going through sort of the social and environmental issues that plague a lot of these projects in this part of the world. As a result of the progress, or the slow progress we're making in Slovakia, we made the decision to start divesting in other parts of the world where we thought we could add value and work on those projects whilst at the same time moving Slovakia forward. So we invested initially in Eritrea in 2014, followed by Zambia in 2015, and this year we announced our third investment in the Congo, in the DRC. A little bit about Slovakia, just to refresh everyone's memory. The resource there, 1.3 million ounces, just under 2 grams gold a ton. Most of the resources in measured and indicated categories. The area there's been mining in the area for centuries, so there's no records for what has been produced in the past, but it's been estimated that based on the size of the deposit today, 1.5 million ounces has been mined of gold and 6 million ounces of silver. Ortac acquired the project from Turnagain Gold back in 2010. Turnagain and the predecessor company, Argus, had spent quite a lot of money drilling and developing the project and getting it to the stage it was then. We subsequently carried out additional infill drilling and then followed that up with a scoping study and a pre-feasibility study. To give you a little idea of the area we're in, that there is the current resource, the 1.3 million ounces, that oval shape. The mineralized structure stretches for over 5 kilometers. So in the past, these areas would have been mined. All that's happened in these areas at the moment is that there's been some trenching, there's been some drilling just to confirm that there's mineralization there. But there hasn't been enough work to actually substantiate putting a resource together. So that's all upside. So at the moment, the bulk of the resource is in this area here to the south, and that's where we've got the 1.3 million ounces. In terms of the feasibility study, as you can see, numbers are quite robust. We're looking at pretty good cash costs as well of around about $555 an ounce, capex of about 120 million. And if you look at if you can see it from the back, I don't know, but the table at the bottom, based on from 1,200 to 1,500 gold price, the post-tax net present value varies from 110 million through to 220 million. So quite a substantial number. And at today's gold prices, you're looking at somewhere around about 140. So where we're today, we've been moving forward with various small-scale mining applications. The reason we've been doing that is to get access to various parts of the ore body to do the various test work that we've been doing. And we announced some test work that we did probably, I think it was around about last year, and we're at the process doing some more test work with an outfit out of the States. In terms of the strategy, we feel that to get this project over the line, we will need a local partner, and that's really where the focus has been over the last year to 2 years. And we were quite close recently to getting a sizable group on board, and unfortunately there's a personal situation where the chap involved had an issue, and now we're sort of in discussions with another outfit, and we've got follow-up site trips probably next week after IGM. As I mentioned, we've invested in other parts of the world, and at the moment we're sitting with 21% of Casa mining. We made our first investment in January this year, just after Indaba. And the reason we like Casa is the potential. The the Casa's got 3 contiguous mining licenses, which they've wrapped around a 60-kilometer gold belt that they've identified. And the main part of the resource that they've proved up is in the middle here, called Akyanga. And to put things into perspective, they started working here in 2010. They were the first company to start working in this area. They've done over 22,000 meters of drilling and soil sampling and geochem and trenching and so forth. So although they've spent over $30 million just for a million ounces, one has to remember they've come into a completely virgin terrain, where initially they were flying in by helicopters to access the site. So the first million ounces is always, as they say, the most expensive. But once you've established yourself then, and once you get a better understanding of the geology and the structure, then things start to be a lot easier. So based on the 1.2 million ounce resource, Casa then went and did a scoping study on that, and which again showed very good numbers. And when we invested, the plan for them, they were thinking of taking it forward and building up a small mine. And we sort of put our money in and we're a bit reluctant. And we said, look, the bigger picture is a much better situation for us, and that's what we would prefer. And so after several discussions, they now have come around to the fact of building a much larger resource. And that's where they're planning to commence a drill program probably beginning of next year. A little bit about where they are. They're in the South Kivu province of the DRC, so it's just north of the Katanga province. But more importantly, they're just south of Banro. Now, Banro is a TSX listed company. They'll be scheduled to produce about 200,000 ounces of gold this year. Banro's service road, which they've spent $150 million putting together so they can access and service their mines, runs within 10 kilometers of Akyanga. There's Akyanga there to the south. Oopsie, sorry. So that service road has been all funded by Banro. So as I said earlier on, the infrastructure of getting into these regions when you first start is quite expensive, both from an exploration point of view and also from a mining point of view. And Casa is fortunate now that they're in the position that all they've got to do is link to the main road at 10 kilometers. That's all they've got to do. And they've got about $350,000. In terms of other deposits in the DRC, obviously, when everyone talks about DRC, they raise their eyebrows. It is, it's not South Kensington. It is a challenge to operate in that environment, but companies have been successful. I mean, if we look at Randgold, they're producing over 600,000 ounces a year out of the DRC. Banro, which is now just 100 to 150 kilometers to the north of Casa, they're going to be producing 200,000 ounces. And there are others. I mean, Kilo Gold, and there's also Berry Gold that's at the moment drilling away. So it is possible to do things in the DRC, but at the same time, it is also a challenge. So I mentioned earlier on that we sort of were more encouraged. We're encouraging Casa to move forward to developing a larger resource base. And so what they went back and did was they got their database, they reinterpreted the geology and the structure of Akyanga. And what I mean by that is when they did their resource of 1.2 million ounces, there was drilling subsequent to that resource. So they've got all the new data, went through it all, and then they did an internal model. And when I say an internal model, it's an independent consultant, but they got him, he did a quick and dirty model for them. And the blue that you see there is the existing model, and the red is where they think they can actually expand the resource to. And I'll get into a little bit more detail about that shortly. Just coming back to here we can see the numbers that was done, the work that's been carried out, and the resource. And the top part of the deposit, Casa didn't discover it. There were artisanals working on this deposit before Casa got there. And that whole 60-kilometer trend, there are artisanals all over it. So as a result of the artisanal activity, when they did the resource model, they had to cut back the grade of the upper part of the deposit. So the top 30 meters has been cut back to 1.5 grams as a result of that activity. The scoping study, as I mentioned, completed in March, positive 80,000 ounce per year operation, just over $600 an ounce cash cost, OPEX of around 87 million, which is quite cheap. It is an heap leach operation, and it would be contractor mining equipment. Waste to ore, quite reasonable, and again the net present value is pretty good. So even at the current 1.2 million ounces, in theory this could be a mine. You could develop a mine on this, but the reality is there's a lot more there. And I don't know if you can see that picture in the back. That's the ridge, the Akyanga ridge, and that's sort of a picture of the artisanal gold that was actually produced the day I arrived. A little bit about the reinterpretation. Again, this is not a code compliant reinterpretation, so it's not a JORC resource. This is internal, and it was just mainly to demonstrate to the team internally that it was well worth pursuing an exploration program to expand the resource. And based on a 1 gram cutoff, the red that you see there is the expanded resource, and that would be, give you 1.7 million ounces, and that's without any drilling. They've incorporated new drill data. They've added, you can't really see it from there, but there are some drill holes in the red plate, which indicates that the mineralization is outside the model as well. The white dots that you see there are the drill holes. The black line is the current resource. The hashed red line is the resource model that I just showed you, so the 1.7 million ounces. To the north, you've got soil geochem anomalies, which indicate the mineralization carries on to the north. To the south, the soil geochem anomalies, carry on. So it's not a given, but it's extremely likely that outside the 1.7 million ounces that they've indicated is potentially there will be more gold. So the plan over the next year or so is to initially put some drill holes in the red, so where the current resource, the 1.7 million ounces, which is not code compliant, just to firm up that mineralization is there, and then as well to step out, where you saw those soil geochem anomalies, and test those areas as well. And if that all comes good, then the plan would be then to follow up that with a more comprehensive infill drill program. And, within Casa, they're targeting 3 million ounces. And then that becomes a substantial deposit in that part of the world. In March last year, we invested in, or we have got to put a convertible and call option note into a company called Zamsord Limited, which has the Calibre license area in the northwest part of the Domes region in Zambia. The Domes region is a region where in the last 10 years you've had basically where 90% of Zambia's copper comes from today. So in 2005 you had First Quantum developed Kanshanshi on the Solwezi Dome. In 2009, Lumwana, which is now owned by Barrick. And in 2014, First Quantum, their Trident project, which is, they just invested, I think it was about $2 billion to get that going. So this part of the copper belt is where all the new big mines are being discovered. All these deposits, all these copper deposits over here in this part of the dome are between 500 to 1 billion ton resource. They're big, and that's the sort of mines that the Rios, the First Quantum, they're like these long life mines where they can sink the capital and they know they're going to make money for 30 years, and that's what perked our interest. And the nice thing about Calibre, well, the fortunate thing for us about Calibre was that the license had been in a legal dispute for 8 years, which is why no one had done any work on it. And this particular license is on the other side of this dome. So that's the Kabombo dome, that's First Quantum's Trident project, and it's on this side of the dome. And when we went out there, it was pretty obvious that, you know, the ground, you know, I can't say you will smell it, but you can feel that it hosts a massive resource. The local guy that had it had been mining the saprolitic oxide mineralization on surface, and had been washing in the local stream and sending the concentrate off to Solwezi. And so it was a bit of a process negotiating with him and then the people that got involved, but we managed to do a deal whereby we initially earned our interest, and they're now in the process of developing a small plant to produce copper cement and cobalt hydroxide cake. It's a small leach plant, which they would then look to expand to produce cathode. Not really what we wanted them to do. I mean, we would have preferred if they focused on drilling and produced and made the big discovery. But this is what that they set out to do initially, and they're carrying that out. So that plant should have been completed by now, but I spoke to them yesterday, and now they're telling me it's between 6 to 8 weeks away. So we wait and see. They're hoping that on the back of that plant, they'll then be able to fund the exploration and the larger prospecting license. So time will tell whether that model works for them. So as I said, mining, I mean, this was the little excavator they had there. As you can see, there's no drill and blast. They were just mining earth. Using they used a sieve in a river initially, but they also have used a mechanical separator. And these are the sieve dumps that they've produced. These dumps are grading about 3.5% copper and about 0.3% cobalt. And you know, the nice thing about this particular area or this particular deposit is that they've got cobalt in it, which is a nice little sweetener. No formal resource. The previous workers, it goes back to the sort of 70s, back to the 30s. So a couple scout drill programs. Barrick had a couple scout drill programs, and Zambia themselves did a bit of drilling, but there hasn't really been enough drilling to tie a resource together. But our estimate is that, you know, within that license area, we would expect them to find something between a resource of between 250 to maybe 500 million tons. Not here, maybe not here at Calibre, but certainly on the rest of that license area. So a little bit more details about the plant. 35,000 tons of ore a day, 1% acid soluble copper. I think they more or less in final stages of dealing with the various off-takers. And then obviously the plan would be to produce cathode, because then they get 100% of LME. And so these pictures are a little bit outdated from the plant, but that's basically the leach tanks. So all they're doing is they're getting the ore, dropping it in acid, copper and the metals leach out of the acid, and then they get that out. And then the last investment that we did was with, the first one I should say was Andiamo. Again, we got 27% of this. Andiamo's in Eritrea. They're operating basically in an area where there's what we call VMS deposits, or volcanic massive sulfide deposits. And these are, I don't know if you've seen on National Geographic, the black smokers on the ocean seafloor. These are basically those deposits which have actually ended up being pushed up on surface. And that's as a result of the closing of the Red Sea. Andiamo, since inception, they've raised $10 million up until the point we invested in them. And subsequent to that, we've put in $1.5 million, and there's also been a joint venture partner who've been operating in the northern part of the license area. They've spent another $2 million. Eritrea, when you hear Eritrea, you think of refugees, and you think of people trying to cross from Libya, but it's actually not a bad jurisdiction to do our business and to do mining in. The government has obviously, got sanctions and so forth, so any form of foreign currency they get coming in, they're supportive of that industry. And if we look at the companies that have operated in that part of the world. Mines have been built, and the famous one, probably that we all know now as a result of reservoirs, Nefsan Resources. It's a TSX listed company. They built their company on this deposit, Bisha, the Bisha mine in Eritrea. And with the revenue generated from that, they were able then to deploy that and take out reservoir minerals for the amount that they've done. There's been Australian companies that have sold a gold discovery or gold project that they were developing for $100 million. And the most recent transaction in Eritrea has been with Sunridge Resources, where they've sold out, I think, last year. So mines are being built. Mines, there's a bit of M&A activity. So in terms of mining, it is a place to do business. Just to come back a little bit on the geology and these VMS belts that I mentioned. There's where Andiamo are, there's two VMS belts, and they've termed them the Eastern and the Western belt. The faint red line that you see there, that's the Eastern belt, and that's where you got the Bisha mine and the Harim, I think it is. And then the Western belt, which is where the Andiamo's license areas. This is it over here. This is the northern part of the license area, and that is Nefsan's Asheli discovery, which they've announced this year, is actually only now 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers away from Andiamo's ground. So although they do have a resource at the deposit that they were working on, which is quite small, it's about 80,000 ounces gold and probably with the copper 150,000 ounces gold equivalent. There is the expectation that this ground will deliver one of these big VMS deposits, and that's why us and others after us have gone in there and are working on it. That's right. In the joint venture area, in the northern part of the license, last year Andiamo announced the discovery that they made at Hoba, and basically Andiamo have done a lot of good work in terms of geochem and geophysics and so forth, and all the joint venture partner did was take this data, walk around on surface, see if they could see anything. They identified one target, they drilled it, and they made the discovery. So the investment case, why Ortac? We've got the resource in Slovakia, which we're slowly working our way through. But if you look at it on paper, you're looking at a resource there that's in today's money is $1 billion in revenue, life of mine. And that's just on what we know today that's there. And we've only drilled down to 200 to 300 meters below surface. And our best hole that we drilled there when we were doing the infill drill program, which was also the deepest hole, was running at 60 meters at over 7 grams. So there's still a lot of gold there, but obviously there's a few hurdles that need to be overcome. And then if we look at our investments to date, between Casa, Zambia and Andiamo, based on the last fundraisings that they've done, that alone is $6 million, which is basically more than nearly double our market cap. So I believe we're undervalued. I believe we're going to get growth in the investments and hopefully by unlocking value on the Slovak project. I think that's it.
That's it.
Thank you.